express their concerns, and do so in a manner that was safe for them and safe for us. One of the greatest pleasures was going out and talking to some of the people behind the scenes, the unsung heroes who were out there on the front line and bringing their stories to the forefront for everyone to see was an immense privilege. And I think everyone coming out of COVID-19 is just, we're a stronger community, a better community. And I just hope that some of the lessons we learned then will continue going forward.
Good evening. Oh. Reshma Raghunath. Today we're talking business, and who better to talk about business than the Chamber of Commerce? Tonight I'm joined by Chamber CEO, Mr. Will Pino, and Chamber President, Mr. Woody Foster. So, gentlemen, first of all, thank you for joining us. Let's get started immediately with the economic impact of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands from a business perspective. What's the feedback been like from your membership, and what's the feeling on the ground?
Well, it's not necessarily our membership. The feedback we're getting is the financial sector is doing quite well. Construction industry seems to be doing quite well. The tourism industry obviously is terrible. But business in general, obviously with winners and losers, generally is doing okay. So I mean, as a country, considering everything that the world has been through, I think Cayman is doing pretty well. But I know we need to dive deeper into that because there's lots of things underneath the surface that isn't readily evident, but there's things going on underneath the surface that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so before we delve into what's happening beneath the surface, well, I'll give you an opportunity to tell us what you've been hearing.
Well, what the council decided to do is it decided to do a follow-up survey from the one that was done in March when the pandemic first broke out, or a little later than that, just to get a sense as to how business is doing. A couple of basic questions on that, which was, how many people did they employ in March compared to now when they filled out the survey? What is their feeling about going forward, in terms of their business? Are they going to downsize? Are they going to lay off any particular people in their organizations? So the results basically say that of the people who responded to the question about their feelings about the economy is that about 50% of the ones, 83 businesses, said that they are considering some type of downsizing or expense reduction. And it's, again, across all types of industry sectors. So it's not a scientific survey. It just gives you a sense of how things are going. And unfortunately, there are some job losses that are forecasted by them in this survey, and it will affect Caymanians.
So in terms of the impact on Caymanians, because that's what we're very interested in, what's happening with Caymanian job loss and Caymanian opportunities, what has the survey found in terms of those losses or projected losses?
Again, it's an unscientific survey. First, I want to premise that, right? Because if you want to do this right, you have to dig down into the industry sectors to get true picture. But basically, there was 111 responses to the survey across all industry sectors. And again, it wasn't heavily weighted in tourism. It was across all sectors. Because we know, as Woody brightly pointed out, tourism has been devastated right now, right? But these are all across the industry sectors. So in March, businesses were employing as high as 2,531 people based on 111 responses from businesses. And now they're saying their business currently employs a high of 1,578. So it gives you a sense as to how many jobs that have, just in these businesses alone that responded, have downsized their businesses. And now this is not only Caymanians, it's also the foreign nationals in this segment of the survey. Then we go deeper into the survey where it's just how many Caymanians or permanent residents are at risk of being laid off or terminated in your business in the next 3 months. If we do we do a low, they're saying about 225 workers, and then as a high about 435. And again, that's based on 82 responses from our members across industry sectors. So you can begin to see that the impact of the pandemic is really coming to fruition now.
Yeah, and we heard that in the Legislative Assembly this week too, when they talked about the financial status of government revenues as well. In the beginning, from January to March, we were okay, finances were fine, but now as we get deeper down into the financial year, we have 68 million shortfall in government revenue. So if that's government, I can't imagine the figures for businesses, especially small businesses, that are now feeling the real impact of COVID-19.
Well, yeah, for sure. It's difficult because some businesses that weren't doing well are actually doing pretty well. Because things have just changed. Because like in my business, our business has changed vastly. In that our custom accounts have dropped by a lot. However, our transaction sizes are higher, so basically people are shopping less, so we don't see them as often. So we have to change the way we do things, like our deli business, for instance, it was decimated. We basically lost it because everybody was either eating at home, they weren't going into the office, so there wasn't this need for having breakfast or lunch at our delis. That was really difficult. It's just I'm only bringing it up to say that it's a complete change in the way that you do business, and you then have to reinvent yourself to come up with the new ways of keeping your business going. We're seeing that in the restaurant business where people aren't eating out as much because obviously during the lockdowns, and of course they also then don't feel comfortable to go to restaurants, they want to stay home, so they're now having to do delivery. So while that may be good because new businesses have popped up to do delivery that weren't there before, so that's good for those businesses. The restaurant business, they lose because while they do get some new business from people ordering that wouldn't have come before, all of a sudden now they're having to pay the delivery company a piece of their profit. They also don't get beverage sales because now you're eating out, you're not buying a glass of wine with that food, and they're also losing the service charge in some instances. So it's tough. You see a lot of restaurants that are working at break even or slightly below, just trying to keep going. So while it appears that they're doing well, are they? So we're talking to a fair amount of restaurant businesses that are really struggling, even though it appears that they're doing quite well. And we see that in our other business, our distribution business, Progressive, where our sales are down significantly in that business because the tourist trade is gone, a lot of the restaurant business is suffering. So what we're hearing, we're seeing it in our distribution business. So it's really difficult as some things come up and some things go down, which is why I said earlier, we got to get underneath the surface to really try and understand who's hurting and who isn't so that we can go and help those people.
And in terms of that, who's hurting and who's not hurting, with the survey that you've done, do you have a snapshot of, say, how many businesses have actually folded since the COVID-19 pandemic touched local shores, or you don't have that kind of data collection happening just yet?
No, we don't. And again, unfortunately, when business tends to close down, they don't make a big deal of it, right? It's just kind of quiet exit on the scene. But we know several businesses have closed. I mean, it's obvious. Some restaurants have closed. And then as Woody rightly pointed out, some have readjusted their business models. They're doing things slightly different to stay afloat. But it's definitely having an impact. And I think the big impact really is the reduction in the number of residents in the country. I mean, that spins off in so many different ways in terms of supporting small businesses, in terms of, again, going to the supermarket, going to thing. And what has really actually helped the economy is the pensions withdrawal. That has unleashed an amount of wealth into the society that has probably bolstered the economy quite significantly. Because some of that money is definitely circulating in the economy. And you can just see it from different types of new things that are happening, from even driving around in new cars and a variety of other things. And it's also obviously helped people that may have lost their jobs and maybe behind in their mortgages, maybe they catch up in some of those things. So that withdrawal was a good decision to keep money circulating in the economy.
Okay, I want to leave it there and take a quick break, and we'll continue that conversation. When we come back, we're going to look at those departures and the numbers. So stick around with us here at the Rush Hour. We'll be right back.
For all the Zoom hashouts and recipe tryouts, the world changed, and we were right there, standing with you, always near, getting closer in so many ways, laughing together as we face these days. And because we are Caribbean, we've got a special insight that tells us there's no need to worry, world. We'll be all right.
Although we all went through COVID-19 as a country, one of the things that I discovered or that I learned while out and about in the community was that everyone was experiencing COVID-19 in a completely different way. Even people who were in the same household were still experiencing COVID-19 completely differently. And one of the greatest challenges was being able to accurately tell their story, express their concerns, and do so in a manner that was safe for them and safe for us. One of the greatest pleasures was going out and talking to some of the people behind the scenes, the unsung heroes who were out there on the front line and bringing their stories to the forefront for everyone to see was an immense privilege. And I think everyone coming out of COVID-19 is just, we're a stronger community, a better community. And I just hope that some of the lessons we learned then will continue going forward.
For all the Zoom hashouts and recipe tryouts, the world changed, and we were right there, standing with you, always near, getting closer in so many ways, laughing together as we face these days. And because we are Caribbean, we've got a special insight that tells us there's no need to worry, world. We'll be all right.
For me as a journalist, the pandemic was just an incredible reminder of the importance of community and the way that that defines and guides the work that we do. At the Compass, we had a surge of people reaching out and calling us, people that I never met before, people I had met, and they were all looking to us to reassure them, to inform them, to tell them what was going on. And at times it was overwhelming, but it was also beautiful in a sense to reconnect with the community in that way and remember that they're turning to us to give them the most accurate information, and information that will guide their lives, will guide the choices that they make for their families.
Anyone who believes we can remain in a complete bubble, that's not possible. But anyone who believes that whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or the Ritz-Carlton people or anybody else, that they are going to force the hand of the government to go down a road of broadly reopening if we don't consider that it is safe. They've all, both sides have gotten it wrong. We are going to continue to be guided by the public health advice that we are getting and have gotten.
Okay, and that was the Premier, Alden McLaughlin, talking at a recent press briefing, October 9th, basically talking about the pressure that business has been giving government, from the border reopening to the resort bubble. How does the Chamber view this position taken by the government? Are you pressuring?
Well, I suppose yes and no. I think we've reiterated multiple times that we feel that the government has done a great job in keeping Cayman safe. We're one of the safest countries on earth right now. And that's fantastic. You can't say good enough things about that position. I think that's going to do well for Cayman long into the future in terms of how, as a country, we've managed the pandemic. However, at some point in time, how long can we effectively stay this safe and afford it? Because the government is spending an inordinate amount of money keeping us safe, offering quarantine for Caymanians. They're, in them doing such a great job, they're spending a lot of money. And so that's an issue. And we do have businesses that are suffering, and they're really just holding on, with the hope that people are going to start coming back and they're going to start to see a lift. So, I mean, the question is, well, how long is that going to take? I'm speaking to a couple of restaurateurs recently, and I'm speaking a lot about restaurants right now, but they're very used to September. We do September every year, and it's difficult every year. However, nobody's used to doing 9 Septembers in a row with more on the horizon. How long can they continue to do that? And how much money is the government willing to spend for them to have to keep doing that? So are we pressuring the government to change their decision? No. What we are pressuring the government to do is to continuously look for ways to open the country safely. Like what they're doing. They started on October 1st. We had 800 people that came in. So I think we need to continue that. We need bigger numbers than that. Instead of quarantining at a hotel, they're allowing self-isolation. There's 800 plus people in self-isolation right now. That's fantastic. We've had many flights that have come in that have had positive cases, but they're in self-isolation, and the country is continuing to do well by that. So how can we increase those numbers? There's rapid testing. No, it's not PCR. PCR is the test, but rapid testing is quite good. Now, again, I don't want to get too far into that because I'm not qualified for that, but there are ways that we can open up the country more to get more people here through the, what's it called now, the Global Citizen program. And so there's things that they have in their horizon that in my opinion, this is just my opinion now, not the Chamber's opinion, is that we're being extremely cautious, and could be a little less cautious to get more numbers? I believe we could. However, you can't really take away how safe we are, right? So I always have to balance whatever I say with, we are really safe, and I'm very thankful for that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the Premier did say in his State of the Nation address that we are going to have to that point, or we will get to that point where we do have to open up safely, and we do have to recognize that by opening up, there will be some risk that we will have to entertain. How we get to that point, of course, takes a lot of planning, strategy, and of course, scientific proof. I mean, just look at what's happening in the UK. They're entering into a month-long lockdown starting tomorrow. The US, the cases are growing. So it's a really tough balance Absolutely. That you have to get into. And I'm sure we'll, at the Chamber, with the businesses that you engage with on a one-on-one basis, do recognize the same.
Well, again, I go back to the survey because, again, I don't want people to believe this is my opinion. It's basically based on this survey that we've done. And we did this survey because we were getting ready to meet with caucus and kind of give them an update and a report that we had put together about some of our recommendations about the economic stimulus plan. And in any case, this one question says, assuming the current situation continues, limited air arrivals, no cruise arrivals, and the quarantine restrictions, which of the following best describes your plans for your business? And again, it was 83 responses that responded to this question. 50% of them, of those 83, it's nearly 50%, said they're going to downsize or make adjustments in order to survive. And again, it goes back to Woody's point about those small restaurants that are having Septembers. Well, when you have repeated Septembers, do you need the staffing? Do you need to order supplies as much as you did? You know, what does your price points look like? Are you putting reduced pricing on your menu in order to get more customers? And the other thing you have to understand is that the pensions money that was released, some people have been laid off of their jobs. And guess what they're using that pension money to do? To start businesses. There are small businesses that are starting up in this pandemic. And the reality is there's more competition with a fewer people who have left the country in terms of residents. So that global concierge program is going to be very important. And I think the big thing that I know the council has really been talking about is what is that number? What is the number that we need to get to safely in order to really reinvigorate the economy? And that's a difficult one because it talks about airlift. And remember, we're controlling airlift right now through Cayman Airways and British Airways. Now, when you open that up, suddenly the control leaves a little bit more because when Americans start arriving, they're going to fill their planes. And they're going to drop them in Cayman. And it's for the government and us to decide how you manage that number of people.
Well, I guess part of that remains having a cap on how many people you're going to allow in when the commercial flights open up. And just to go back to what the Premier said in the State of the Nation address, he did acknowledge that commercial flights are going to return. He did not say when, but it's going to happen. And we can't continue to, just guess. It has to be a strategic rollout, and we're still in that phase one of that rollout. What the phase two looks like is what we're all anxiously awaiting. And to the point that you were making about the departures, we do have some figures of how many people have left in repatriation flights. The numbers that we got were 7,460 people left Cayman, and that's for the COVID period. And of those, 5,860 were a combination of workers and visitors, while 1,600 of those departures were Caymanians. Now, that's a reflection of how many expat workers left, because at that point in time when we got into the lockdown, we had the hotels closing, the tourism, hospitality industry basically being decimated because of the closures. And we don't see cruise coming back in a hurry, even though the CDC has said cruise ships can go again. But the position from government is, yeah, but not here,
Right.
basically, right? And then when you look at the border reopening and the figures that we have coming back into the island, it's almost half, if not just under half. We had 3,000 arrivals based on the latest numbers. And of those arrivals, most were Caymanians. There were 1,300 Caymanians, there were 1,200 visitors, and 225 visitors. Now that's numbers that we're not accustomed to seeing, 225 visitors. What would you like to see that number look like as we navigate the path of our border reopening?
I'm not sure about Will, but I don't know that we could put a number to that, to be honest. I mean, that's above my pay grade, I think, in terms of coming up with that. But for me, I would like to just see more transparency in kind of how we start to make decisions as a country in letting more people in or turning them down. Because I mean, we have to also, we must look forward, right? And in terms of planning, it's not easy to just start back up a business. It's not a light switch, right? You just can't turn it on. The planning needs to take place. Employees need to be hired. So as the country starts to take back up, we need to be prepared for that, right? I've been telling a fair amount of people recently that we've had some of the best applications of Caymanians that I think we've had in the 40 years of doing business. And the reason for that is, some of those people that would not be interested in our business, not a very sexy business, the supermarket business, they would never come to work for a supermarket, but they don't really have a choice. So we've hired some amazing people, which is great, and we're thankful for that. Problem is when things start to tick back up, they're going to go back to where they were. So all of a sudden now, we're going to have to hire new people. Where are they going to come from? So while we talk about, at some point in time, we're going to talk about Caymanian job losses, but when we look at the numbers from work, they're not huge. So unemployment as a figure is not out of control by any means. And a big plus to government in that is that, like in the tourism sector, they are giving a stipend to thousands of tourism workers. So kudos to government, but you don't see those people on the work registry as being hireable. So there's a lot of businesses that are going to need to hire employees. Where do we get them from? And so if you're talking about work permit, it takes months for that process to happen. If we're not given good information to plan and to be ready for that, people are going to start arriving and businesses won't be ready, right? So transparency in how the country operates looking forward in this pandemic is really critical. And for me, I think that's one of the opportunities that government could do a stronger job on.
And I think we also have to think about, what we were like before the pandemic. We were coming off probably one of our best tourism overnight visitors year, right? And that really is what has sustained the industry during this period. Now, if they miss the high season, which is coming up entirely, which they will, what will happen to those resorts? The question is it better for them to close their doors for a period of time? Like Woody pointed out, I mean, it's just not saying, okay, oh yeah, we're going to open up next week, Monday. No, the tourism industry is a completely different type of industry that has a lot of planning, a lot of preparation. You got to get the right staff in there, and the level of quality product that we have, you have to ensure you have high quality for the prices we charge. Mm-hmm. So all of these factors have to be borne in mind when making a long-term or even a medium-term plan to reopen the industry.
Okay. Now, government has a plan for the Global Citizen Program, and I want you to stick around because we're going to touch on that and see how that factors into Cayman's regeneration. Stick around. We'll be right back.
For all the Zoom hashouts and recipe tryouts, the world changed and we were right there, standing with you, always near, getting closer in so many ways, laughing together as we face these days. And because we are Caribbean, we've got a special insight that tells us there's no need to worry, world. We'll be all right.
Although we all went through COVID-19 as a country, one of the things that I discovered or that I learned while out and about in the community was that everyone was experiencing COVID-19 in a completely different way. Even people who were in the same household were still experiencing COVID-19 completely differently. And one of the greatest challenges was being able to accurately tell their story, express their concerns, and do so in a manner that was safe for them and safe for us. One of the greatest pleasures was going out and talking to some of the people behind the scenes, the unsung heroes who were out there on the front line and bringing their stories to the forefront for everyone to see was an immense privilege. And I think everyone coming out of COVID-19 is just, we're a stronger community, a better community. And I just hope that some of the lessons we learned then will continue going forward.
For all the Zoom hashouts and recipe tryouts, the world changed and we were right there, standing with you, always near, getting closer in so many ways, laughing together as we face these days. And because we are Caribbean, we've got a special insight that tells us there's no need to worry, world. We'll be all right.
Welcome back to the Rush Hour. We're continuing our conversation with the Chamber of Commerce President, Mr. Woody Foster, and the CEO, Mr. Will Pinault. Now, when we left off, we were talking about the plan or the rollout of the plan for taking Cayman back to prosperity. Now, part of that plan includes the Global Citizen Program. We touched on that before. How does the Chamber see this really impacting getting business back up to maybe, if not full levels that we were? I mean, it's impossible to happen, but close to. Would that? How does that work from the Chamber perspective?
I don't believe it'll get it even remotely close to full. The numbers are too small. I was speaking with somebody from government recently, and they were talking about Barbados program, and they've been doing theirs for quite a while, so this isn't new to them, and their numbers are like 250 a month or something. And they said those are the numbers that we're looking at. I mean, Cayman does 40,000 tourists a month, so Global Citizen it's not going to do anything. But it does go to something we had said earlier, is how do you get enough people here to where we can, just keep the economy going. So I don't think it's getting the economy back up to where it was. It's just keeping us going until we can start to get tourists back on the island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to take a while, and again, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, I congratulate government on putting the program forward. It kind of puts us into a new space where, people can come here. It's a revenue earner for government as well, which is a good thing at this time. And I think what he pointed out, because we have been so successful in controlling the spread of the virus here and monitoring everything and dealing with the people coming in, we are really a good, attractive place for people to settle if they won't so wish. And so it's positive news, but we go back to the point about what is the plan as to how many, what's the target. And that's why I think they started with October. I think they exceeded the 800. I think there was up around 1,200 in October. And then what is that goal for November? What is that goal for December? And the challenge you're going to have, again, is the hotel sector really wants to see it opened up a lot more. And also the condominiums. You have to understand that some of those owners want to come back to check on their condos, but they also are in the rental pool, right? Mm-hmm. So they're anxious to get people staying in there so that they can get their return on their investments.
Now, I want to touch on an issue that flared up during COVID-19, and it could still be a reality for us, and that's food security. We have countries, our main supply countries, still facing lockdown, still facing high number of cases, which impacts their employees, their ability to continue to keep their operations up and running. What's the plan like? And I know, Woody, I'm asking you this in particular because you fit into that bracket, so you would have that wherewithal to, speak particularly to this issue. But what's the plan like for our own food security, our distribution channels? What does it look like? Because we're heading into what they're saying could be a second wave, which we should all be preparing for.
From our perspective, we don't have an issue generally. We came through March and April and May, which is the absolute worst, because nobody was prepared for it at all, and we survived that really well. So to have a second wave, the manufacturers have had an opportunity to retool, to ramp up, to do things differently, and to be better prepared. So if we can come out of March, April, and May the way that we did, I can't see how it would get any worse than that. And in speaking to our vendors, they feel very confident that they'll be able to take care of us better moving forward than they did back then. Now that's obviously quite a general statement. Now, because if you look at out of stocks in the stores now, they're relative to the problem, the worldwide problem, we look really good. Relative to February, we look really bad, right? So our cleaning sections are really not good. Paper products are still an issue. So there's still some issues in some areas, but generally we're in good shape. So we are not foreseeing any problem per se going into a second wave. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be issues. There will be, but we're not going to have a food security problem, at least as far as we can see and what we're being told.
Well, just to build on a point that you would have made earlier in terms of the small businesses, and you're seeing small businesses come up. Now, government has offered grants and support to small businesses. From the feedback from your membership, is that process working? How has the response been to that? Have you gotten any feedback?
I haven't really gotten that much feedback to that. We didn't ask them specifically. It is one of the questions as to whether, during this period, if we don't really open up in a progressive way, then they basically are saying that they will go to government for further assistance. And government has offered that assistance, which is really good. And that's what will keep them going. But again, it goes back to Woody's point, I think, and the council's point really, is that we need to talk about the plan. What is that plan? Say March. Look at from now to March. What are we going to do in terms of numbers of people? And hopefully we'll be hearing more about that as government evaluates what they've done so far and says, okay, this is what we can do. And again, it's still not going to be enough, unfortunately, and there's still going to be a lot of government assistance for some of these small businesses, because when you lose that many residents in a country as small as ours, it has a significant impact. And that's why I said earlier that pension money really was a godsend, that people had that saved and they could actually draw upon it to spend.
Now, I wanted, one of the large features of this talk show is getting involvement from our viewers. And what we generally do is get questions from the public. And now that and since you've mentioned the pension, we'll touch on that because that was one of the questions that was asked from members of the public. But I want to take us to that segment and some of the questions that members of the public have for you, Chamber of Commerce.
What are the plans to help businesses that are deeply affected, especially in tourism, that once the island does reopen,
is when you have a reduced number of overnight visitors eating at restaurants, they have a certain clientele that those restaurants cater to, and then you have the local residents that support certain types of restaurants in our community. Well, when you have 3,000, 4,000 fewer of those residents that support the smaller restaurants, it takes a big chunk out of the market, doesn't it? And so my recommendation to him is basically look at your pricing, look at your menu. What are you doing differently than other restaurants are doing? I mean, I think earlier on in this crisis, we actually met with a lot of the delivery companies at the early stages of this. And I think those delivery services are actually doing a great job in helping to support these small restaurants, actually. So I would encourage him to also see if he can introduce delivery services through them.
Okay. One of the questions that we got from Twitter asked specifically about what are the plans from a business perspective to grow the population. Now we know that the target was 100,000 for population, or that's what we were projected to be at. We've had people leave. Now where we are with COVID-19, we're not sure what the numbers are going to look like. From a business perspective, are you planning for that kind of population growth?
Well, that was obviously pre-COVID, but I believe that because of the amazing place that Cayman is in terms of how safe we are. And I will say how resilient we have been over the last 2 decades of going through problems, surviving them, and coming out even stronger. This, I think, how we've handled COVID as a country just cements that resiliency. And when things start to pick back up, I'll use the word post-COVID because the vaccine's there and things are starting to pick up again and tourists are coming back and the borders are open. I think Cayman is going to be in an amazing position to the population is not going to be a problem. In fact, it'll be a problem in the other ways that we will be growing quickly, I believe. So I don't know that we need to work towards growing the population. I think we need to work to a sustainable Cayman of how we grow at a rate that we can handle so that we don't end up with traffic problems, housing problems, which are the things that we were talking about in February. So COVID has sort of hit the pause button on that, but it's not going to go away. I think it's going to get exacerbated because of how resilient this country is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're on the Economic Sustainability Committee, if I remember correctly. So these are some of the issues that you've been discussing as well on that committee. Can you share any perspective on
economic continuity, basically, how do we get the country back up and running? And I think if I go back to the 100,000 question, that question, we actually put that out in an economic forum that we did 2 years ago. And that was a question that we threw out there saying, so to bring about a discussion about growth, right? Because let's face the reality, all economies should be growing. Whether, if you're not growing, you're kind of flat, and that doesn't really create jobs, it doesn't create wealth, and that's a challenge. I think from the standpoint of what the Chamber has always stood for, even when we did the Future of Cayman Economic Development Initiative, was what is the plan for managing your infrastructure to accommodate that growth. And I think one of the actually deliverables during the Future of Cayman forum that was created with government and the private sector is a national infrastructure plan. What roads are you going to build? Where are they going to go? How are you going to fund them? And there was just like a couple of action points. And I think that is probably something that the next government and the May will probably have to start looking at. As Woody's point is right. Everyone's going to want to come here because of it's safe. It's a great place to raise kids. Low crime. It has all of the benefits of a beautiful place to live. But the question is, do we have the infrastructure to accommodate that growth?
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. That's a very solid point to end on, because now we're going to go to the fun stuff. After this break, we're going to get into another new feature here on the Rush Hour called Rapid Fire. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it.
For all the Zoom hashouts and recipe tryouts, the world changed, and we were right there, standing with you, always near, getting closer in so many ways, laughing together as we face these days. And because we are Caribbean, we've got a special insight that tells us there's no need to worry, world. We'll be all right.
Although we all went through COVID-19 as a country, one of the things that I discovered or that I learned while out and about in the community was that everyone was experiencing COVID-19 in a completely different way. Even people who were in the same household were still experiencing COVID-19 completely differently. And one of the greatest challenges was being able to accurately tell their story, express their concerns, and do so in a manner that was safe for them and safe for us. One of the greatest pleasures was going out and talking to some of the people behind the scenes, the unsung heroes who were out there on the front line and bringing their stories to the forefront for everyone to see was an immense privilege. And I think everyone coming out of COVID-19 is just, we're a stronger community, a better community. And I just hope that some of the lessons we learned then will continue going forward.
Welcome back to the Rush Hour. Now we're going to get into a special and new segment called Rapid Fire Questions. Now this is how it's going to go, guys. I'm going to ask you questions. You have to answer with whatever comes at the top of your head. With a word of caution, no curse words. Okay, so let's start first with, if you had a choice between two superpowers, being invisible or flying, what would you choose? Woody, you first.
Flying.
Will.
I'd probably be flying as well.
Why? Why flying?
COVID is invisible. You can't fight it.
Good answer.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that one. What was the last gift you gave someone?
My eternal
No
love.
thinking.
Oh boy.
Okay, moving on.
Valentine's
Guys don't
Day.
give gifts. Come on. All right. What's the last thing you watched on TV and why you chose to watch it? Now, you better
News.
say the Rush Hour, okay?
The news.
Believe it or not, I watched the Legislative Assembly.
We got issues with
Good one. All right. If you could compare yourself with any animal, what would it be and why?
a dog.
Why?
Well, notwithstanding that I don't really like dogs, most people do. And they're loyal and be your best friend.
Oh, the characteristic traits. Okay. Will?
Yeah, I think, again, I like flying, so probably the bird. You know, kind of cool and hanging out with all the other birds and
You get to fly home south.
laid back, you know, with the ching-chings along the waterfront.
Listen, I will have you know the ching-chings are not welcome birds, okay? Those birds are wicked. All right. Now, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I'm not sure that I even thought about it. I always worked in family business.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
It was a journalist, yeah. And
You're
I actually did it.
kidding.
Yeah, I was a journalist, and I enjoyed it while it lasted, you know. And some of the skills I learned in journalism, it serves me well in what I'm doing at the Chambers. So it definitely was journalism.
nice.
It's not what it is today. I sympathize with you guys.
Yeah, it is a bit difficult. It is. Okay, what is your favorite type of music and why?
Reggae.
Yeah, mine is Christian.
Okay, nice. And finally, I'm going to end the misery. Tell me something about yourself that people may not know. What do you first?
Introverted.
You are? I would not have known that.
There you go.
Yeah, Will?
Let's see. What people wouldn't know about me. Well, I played baseball for most of my young life. I mean, even in Cayman, I played on the national softball team. And actually, my real aspiration was to become a professional baseball player. And I thought it was okay, but it didn't work out.
So what's your softball stats? Because Kevin plays softball. Let's see if he...
Oh, there we go. I was a shortstop. I played in my heyday. I was center field. I used to steal bases, and I had about a 320 average. And this is the real sport, which is baseball, not the softball stuff.
Okay. So we have Kevin pegged down for a weightlifting contest between him and Tasha Ebanks Garcia, who came on last week. So maybe we're going to have a baseball competition between you and Kevin.
Yeah, but there's a big age difference here. That's unfair, man. You know. And it's funny because when I played on the co-ed league, you know, you start playing against 26 years old, and when you're over 50, and you start realizing that you're going around third base, and your legs don't work the same way as they did when you were 25. It's a really interesting experience.
All right, great. So that brings a close to the rapid fire segment. Thank you so much for participating. You did well. I am impressed. Before we wrap up the show, I'm going to give you an opportunity to have some final thoughts before we close. Woody, we'll go with you first.
Well, I think I can easily say that I am extremely happy and proud to be a Caymanian and living in this amazing country. As a nation, I think we've done an amazing job. We have a great future in front of us. We just have this hurdle that we need to climb to get through COVID, as the rest of the world does. But I'm just thankful for where we are and for the job that we've done.
Okay, great. Will?
Yeah, I'm just thankful for the leadership of the Chamber, to be honest with you. Woody has done an outstanding job as president and the executive committee, because you have to understand it's a volunteer position that you actually have to run your own business while you're doing this as well. And we've gone through the pandemic. They've always been there. They've worked. It's President-elect Mike Gibbs, Secretary Steve McIntosh done a great job. So has Treasurer Colin Robinson, and Vice President Shamari Scott. All did a great, and then also the council, and also the unsung hero, some of my staff members, because a lot of the things that we do, you don't really see them doing what they have to do. So I'd like to have a shout out to all the staff members, and finally the membership of the Chamber has been really great. I mean, we just had to postpone our golf tournament, which was supposed to happen on Friday. It's sold out, 112 golfers. Sponsorships were great even in these times. I have a great membership, and we're blessed to be living in the Cayman Islands. We really are, and have so much to be thankful for.
Well, actually, could I just steal one thing off of something that Will just said? That just
Sure.
The unsung heroes that helped us to get through the pandemic. That those jobs that nobody even notices. That if it weren't for those people that do them every single day, I'm thankful to those individuals.
Okay, great. And as we wrap up, as per usual, I'm going to leave you with a little inspiration as you continue on to your work week. And just building on what these good gentlemen said, sometimes we are tested not to show our weakness, but to discover our strengths. Cayman, I'm going to leave you with that tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.